In this video, we race around North Wales trying to find some rare and scarce species of birds. Today's birding adventure started in Anglesey at Newborough Forest, looking for a species that was a bit of a nemesis until very recently. Hey folks, we're back. This time in Anglesey. We've come to a place, a fellow bird has given me a heads up, we might find a bird that I don't have a good history of. And Kaylee's seen before me.
Firecrest.
Firecrest. So I'm really hoping it's right. That'd be lovely to get that off the year list so soon. Stay with us, let's see if we find it. We'd been told the place to see these firecrest was from a hide-like cabin that was across the road from the car park, so we headed there and settled down. We began scanning the wooded area in front of us, and there was plenty of life to see. There were robins and large flocks of long-tailed tits feeding amongst the branches. We soon spotted a very small, very mobile bird in the trees in front of us, hoping that it saw firecrest. It wasn't. It was the firecrest's more common counterpart, the goldcrest. There were quite a few of these here. After sitting and waiting in the hide for a while with no sign of the firecrest, we were getting quite cold, so we decided to explore the area a bit. Quite soon finding a couple of great spotted woodpeckers, this one a little silhouetted moving high in the tree. As we walked back towards where we'd parked the car, we spotted another bird for our year list, this lovely song thrush that was feeding in the grass. Around the edges of the car park there was a couple of bird feeders. These feeders were very busy with birds coming back and to, the most common being great tit. There were loads of them here. These were being joined also by blue tits and some chaffinch. Wanting to explore the area a little more, we walked down another path, which ended with a screen that looked over a piece of water. On the water there were a few ducks, mainly mallards, but amongst them there was this lovely gadwall that was swimming close to the screen. Whilst we were looking out on the piece of water, a robin came and sat on a branch and shouted at us for a while until we left. Not wanting to upset the robin by invading its territory, we headed back towards the car, having once again failed to see a firecrest. Maybe next time. But now it was time to move on, and this time to RSPB Cdewor. This reserve is a large area of flooded marshland and can be excellent for birds this time of year. The only problem though, it was a wind tunnel. It's cold. We're at Cdewor.
It's always cold.
It's windy here. There's loads of birds, like golden plovers and lapwing, loads of stuff in the sky. It's amazing. Gonna have a look around, see if we can pick some birds for the year list. This reserve today was teeming with life. We didn't know where to look. Amongst the ducks on the water, the skies were full of wading birds. This flock here are black-tailed godwits. I was surprised to see that a couple of these birds were already getting into their russet summer plumage. Another wading bird that I was really happy to see was golden plover. These were here in huge numbers. Large flocks of them would fly around and then land for a while. These golden plovers would be accompanied by the species that was most numerous here, the lapwing. There were hundreds of these here and were easily spooked, taken to the skies at a moment's notice, making for quite a spectacle. And although today the wading birds were stars of the show, there were many species of duck present too. We had great close views of pintails as they fed close to the bank. There were plenty of other ducks as well, like widgeon and teal. And although this reserve is quite large with paths going all around the marshes, it was so cold today we decided just to walk up the main path and back, being greeted at the end of the path by a mute swan. As we got to the bridge at the end and turned round, we did spot a bird of prey in the distance. This was a male marsh harrier who flew quite high over the marsh, this making all the wading birds lift again. In previous weeks there have been reports at this site of one of my nemesis birds from last year, the water pipit, and although there hadn't been a sighting here for at least a week, I did keep my eye out for small birds on the ground. But today the only birds feeding on the grass and mud were pied wagtails. We did have a very showy stone chap make an appearance a couple of times, sitting on fence posts. And as we got back towards the car park, we noticed a couple of shovelers on the water, looking up in the air. We soon noticed why, as a buzzard flew over. The marsh harrier and this buzzard weren't the only bird of prey here. We saw this lovely male kestrel hovering, hunting over the marsh. But now it was time to move on to our next destination, South Stack Cliffs. This reserve, although quiet in the winter for most species, is home to one resident species that we were after, the chough. We began our search by making our way down the steps towards the cliff's edge near the lighthouse. But the only bird present here was a great blackback gull sat on the cliff's edge. So we headed back up the steps towards the car. En route though, we spotted the bird we were after, the chough. Two of them were flying in the distance and appeared to land a little bit further away. So we jumped in the car and drove down the hill to the next car park. When we arrived, we couldn't find the chough. There were some other corvids around, like these jackdaws that we could add to our year list. After a little bit of searching around the edge of the car park, we finally spotted the birds we were after. There were two of them sat on a fence preening. The only problem is the fence was in somebody's garden that backed onto the car park, so we had to climb up a slippy bank to view them. But it was well worth it as we got quite close to the birds and they didn't seem at all bothered by us. This unusual looking species is related to the crows, and although not at all common, does have a resident breeding population in the UK, with a few hundred breeding pairs present. This population appears to be restricted to coastal areas on the west side of the country, mainly West Wales, Western Island, the Isle of Man, and small numbers in both Cornwall and Scotland. Hey folks, so I've come down to the next car park, it's still blowing a gale, following the chough that I saw flying, and I found them effectively in someone's back garden. I had to stand on a pretty precarious ledge to get some footage, but they were quite close, so that's excellent. Another one off the year list. The amazing choughs and the jackdaws weren't the only corvids present here. We did see this group of magpies that were fighting amongst themselves. At one point it got quite brutal, to the point where we thought we might have to get in and referee. Now it was time to move on to a little place called the Inland Sea, which is reportedly good at this time of the year for wintering ducks and grebes. We walked for a while along the shore, but the first birds we saw weren't ducks or grebes, they were wading birds. We saw good numbers of oyster catchers and redshank. And a little bit up the shore we noticed a shelduck amongst the redshank. Scanning a little further out in the distance, we noticed a group of red-breasted mergansers. There was a number of male birds here that appeared to be displaying to a female. This was lovely to see. Apart from the birds we've mentioned, we didn't see much else other than a group of 3 female goldeneye that were far in the distance. So we headed back in the direction we came, towards a wall that splits the inland sea in two. En route we noticed 2 small birds flying, one of them landed on the wall. This lovely little bird was a rock pipit and gave us wonderful views. When we arrived at the wall we scanned the other side of the water and there was plenty of life, including Canada geese, shelduck and some wading birds like black-tailed godwits. We did pick up a new bird for the year list here in the shape of Brent geese. There was a group of these that were feeding on some exposed marsh. Although these were fantastic to see, it was time to move on again, and this time towards hopefully a potential rarity. This meant driving to a lake next to RAF Valley. Hey folks, we're still on Anglesey near RAF Valley, so if you hear any noises it might be planes going over. The species we were looking for was the rare red-necked grebe. There had been one sighted here on previous days, and finding it came pretty quickly, although it remained quite distant, feeding along a reed bed. This species may breed in the UK, but any potential breeding sites are kept secret to protect the birds. Most sightings of this species in Britain occur in winter, when small numbers of this lovely looking grebe arrive around coastal waters. So with this species being far from common, and us only having seen it twice before, we were pretty happy to get this one on our year list. And close to home. This redneck grebe wasn't the only bird we managed to get on our year list here. We also picked up a rook. This species isn't at all rare, but apparently it is declining. We also picked up a not so common duck species, the greater scorb. As the sun came out, we noticed a female of this species in the far distance against the bank. After successfully picking up a couple of new species for the year list, it was time to move on, and this time, a second chance.
Where are we going?
Hey folks, we got the redneck grebe, although it was at a distance, but now there's been a report of a fire crest, as we missed one this morning, so we're going to try and get this one. It's about 15 minutes away, so stick with us. We arrived at the location the fire crest had been sighted, but there were no other birders. Hey folks, we're here at Morpher Madron Nature Reserve trying to find a fire crest. We missed one this morning, so we're hoping to catch this one, although I was expecting people to be here and there isn't anybody, so
Yes.
we're going to have to try and find it. Again, like this morning, there were good numbers of gold crest about, mostly high up in the trees feeding amongst the ivy. While scanning through the gold crest, we picked up another bird for our year list, the tree creeper. You can see it here in the middle of the tree, climbing up a bit like a mouse. There were plenty of other birds here too, like flocks of long-tailed tits, and another bird for our year list, the coal tit. But again, unfortunately, the curse of the fire crest struck once more. We've dipped it again.
Nigel and the curse.
Me and the curse of the fire crest. We've dipped it again, second time in a day. We're going to have to call it soon. We might have time for one more stop. About half an hour back on the road got us to our final destination of the day, Rosneath. And we'd come here to try and find a very special little species of wader. Hey folks, it's coming late into the afternoon and we've come to Rosneath for a very specific little wading bird. One that Kaylee's really fond of, a purple sandpiper. Our task now was to walk along the front and peer down at the rocks to see if we could find one of these cool little birds. And luckily, with it tied in right up to the rocks, it didn't take us long at all. We found a small number of these stunning little waders feeding on the rocks in front of us. Although purple sandpipers have been known to breed in the UK, they have only done it in very small numbers and have been restricted to Scotland. And any potential sites, much like the redneck grebe, have been kept secret to protect the species, making the purple sandpiper among the rarest breeding birds in the UK. Luckily though for us, in winter a few thousand show up around rocky coastlines like this one here at Rosneath. These incredible sandpipers weren't the only little wading birds in attendance here. They were joined by turnstone, and there were good numbers of these here, some roosting on the rocks and some feeding. One lovely thing to witness here was turnstone and purple sandpiper feeding side by side. By now we were losing the light and our birding day was coming to an end. But it had been a real success. Despite failing to see the fire crest twice, we got amazing views of waders at Cdewor, seeing the rare redneck grebe and these purple sandpipers. Fantastic. In our next video we'll be getting involved in the RSPB Big Garden Birdwatch, but we'll be doing it a bit differently. Instead of sitting at home watching the garden, we'll be reviewing a smart bird feeder, letting it do the job for us while we go birding, trying to find a couple of rare American ducks and looking for a small bird we've only seen in the UK once. Please join us for that. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, please subscribe, and please press the notification bell. We'll see you next time.